He used to live in Saudi Arabia before, and he wrote a book to refute the atheism and stuff like that in his time. They said that this book is the mahar of al-hur al-ain in Jannah. But this man ended up atheist.
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome back to Beyond the Mimbar podcast. I am your host, Waleed Basyouni. And today, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, we have a very, very, very special guest. Our guest has not been at Green Masjid for some time, and it is my absolute pleasure and honor to have our Shaykh here, who's visiting us from across the pond, as they say. I'm with today Shaykh Waleed Basyouni. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Muhammad. Jazakallah khair for having me beyond the member.
Allah barik fik. Allah barik fik. It's really, really nice to see you. Like I mentioned, mashallah, I think it's been nearly close to 4 years since you've been at Green Masjid.
I'll be honest with you, I lost count of years with COVID, so that's like, sometimes I think it's last year. It's, oh, another 3 years ago. It's weird, that period of time. But definitely it was like more than 3 years, yes. And it has been a long time since I came to the United Kingdom.
Yeah. But it is an absolute pleasure to have you back.
Thank you.
It's good to see you.
Alhamdulillah, this is a very blessed place, alhamdulillah, and I always love to visit the Masjid whenever I come to England, alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah, Allah preserve you. Sheikh, so today, mashallah, was the day of Jum'ah, and we attended the khutbah, Allah barik, Jazakallah khair. And the khutbah was very, very practical, and it was about seeking knowledge, right? And I was sitting with one of the brothers who you met earlier, the brother from Islam-wise, Brother Amr, and it was the khutbah itself about knowledge, and you've put so many stories in there from different scholars, right? And also gave us 5 points of 5 points that shouldn't hinder you from knowledge, and 5 points that you should take on to actually encourage you to seek knowledge. So that kind of even inspired me to want to talk about this podcast and this subject. So inshallah, today with yourself, Sheikh, I would love to discuss the matter of Aqeedah, inshallah. So my first question, Sheikh, to you, because our viewers, the general Muslim students of knowledge, we get loads of different comments from different people who watch the show. So my first question, Sheikh, is a very general question, inshallah ta'ala. It is, what is the meaning of Aqeedah, and where did this term come from, inshallah?
Pretty good. Aqeedah, it's an Arabic word, comes from the word aqada, which is like a knot. Al-aqd is when you tie two things together, and you make a knot, strong connection. So al-aqeedah, it is between certain articles of faith and the heart, because that's where the belief is. So it is huwa aqdul qalb. It is when your heart is confirming, a certain belief. And these beliefs are related to the shahada, which is la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, and what it entails. So al-aqeedah is also, you can say, it is that confirmed belief, that when you're so certain about something and you believe in it, deeply believe in it, and that will apply, for example, to the article of faith, like even billah wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi. That's how Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah defined actually the Aqeedah, and every one of these, what it entails. And you can find others said, no, it is about Shahadat Allah ila Muhammad Rasulullah and what it entails. In the end of the day, both, whatever, we're not going to fight over terminologies, but at the end of the day, it is these articles that you have confirmed belief about it. And that, through history, became something that focusing on issues that they are not in the practice, in the practical things. So they don't consider the salat and part of the Aqeedah science. Okay? Al-Aqeedah became more of a branch of Islamic studies, and this Al-Aqeedah will only focus on theoretical things. Not something that it required Like not salah, not zakat, not hajj. These are the practical part of Islam. But the aqidah will be what's the belief in relation to Allah, the angels, stuff like that. I'm sorry for being a little bit more details, but uh, that development not necessarily happened by Ahl Sunnah. Historically speaking, that development contribute to that development of this branch of Islamic studies by so many people, like any other field, like fiqh, usul fiqh, you know, the essence of it was known early in Islam, but centuries later on, 300, 200 years, whatever, the second century or the end of the second century, there is now a development of something called Aqeedah, the belief. And that development of that branch was intend to identify what are the area of belief that the Sunni, for example, will be different from non-Sunnis, or people who follow the pure Sunnah of the way of the Prophet ﷺ from Al-Sunnah and versus others. And that became something later on to identify them. But that's not what the Aqeedah is only. The Aqeedah can be also seen in the people who don't follow the Athari Aqeedah. They develop the Aqeedah, they call it Ilm al-Kalam. And I think that's one of the big difference between the approach of Aqeedah in an Athari way versus non-Athari. For us, we don't consider that Ilm al-Kalam. We don't consider Ilm al-Kalam Aqeedah. But in reality, Ilm al-Kalam is what we call Aqeedah in the Athari, traditions. But for them, it's Ilm al-Kalam, or they call it al-Ilahiyat or al-Ghaybiyat. But even using word like al-Ghaybiyat or al-Ilahiyat, that's one branch of Aqeedah. Anyway, I'm not going to go into the detail, but what I want the listener to understand, the Aqeedah became a science, or one of Islamic studies, like we talk about Mustalah al-Hadith, and that field focusing on the issue of article of faith and the thing related to theology in general. طيب, is everything in that field every Muslim must believe in? No. Tomorrow I'm teaching here. One thing we're going to talk about, al-mizan. There is a skill that your deeds will be weighted. Every Muslim must believe in something called the skill, mizan, and your deed will be weighted. Period. But you know what theologians talk about? Do you have one mizan or multiple ones? And if there are multiple, each one person has a mizan or not? You see what I'm saying? This mizan, how big? What's the size? What's in it? Who will be weighted? All these details is not something that I'm required in essence, يجب عليك أن تعتقد. Allah never asked us to believe in these things, but it has become part of ilm al-aqeedah, branches, not any major issues. It's like, did the Prophet saw Allah or not? What I need to believe that we will see Allah in the Day of Judgment, that Allah can be seen and Allah sees. But did the Prophet saw? That's part of ilm al-aqeedah, but it's not of the aqeedah that every Muslim must prescribe to. So in the ilm al-aqeedah became fundamentals and principles and branches. But if you go originally to what's the aqeedah used to be, it's only about the thing that you must believe in. And if you're not Sunni. But over time it changed. And that's why people have to differentiate between a statement like, you can learn the Aqeedah in 5 minutes. That's true or not true. The things that will make me have a correct belief in i'tiqad in Islam, I can learn in 5 minutes. And it's not true if you're going to talk about the science of Aqeedah. That's way more deeper discussions. And there's more ilm in it. So understanding that historical background of how this developed over time, it allowed you to deal with, because these statements can be tricky. People rush to criticize the people who are saying it, or say, oh, Aqeedah doesn't matter. No, it matters. Otherwise, I can say about the fiqh, usul fiqh, everything I can say is simple. It's like 1 minute thing. But it's became more complicated as time passed by.
Barakallah fiqh, Jazakallah khair. So Sheikh, now, you talk about the fundamentals, and the foundations of Aqeedah. So those things, in terms of the general Muslim, what role does that play in the Muslim's daily life? Because you spoke about, of course, the theology, and then the practical part of it in terms of, salah, siyam, and then you have the Aqeedah. So the foundations, what role does that play in the average Muslim's daily life?
Pretty good. I'll talk from the school that I practiced, the methodology of Al-Sunnah Jama'ah, the Athari way of looking at Aqeedah, because I believe there is a huge difference between the Athari approach to the Aqeedah versus the non-Athari. Very big difference. And I'll just talk about from the perspective of the Athari. When we look at the Aqeedah, we don't look at it as something theoretical. We're just not a bunch of information. That's for us not the belief, the essence of beliefs is when you translate this to actions. That's why we don't really differentiate between Iman in the Athari sense is what? Is a combination of three things. Actions, or belief in the heart, statement, which is La ilaha illallah, which is the tongue, then the actions of the body, limbs, jawarih. Non-Athari will not consider A'mal as part of Iman. That's why for them, when you talk about Aqeedah, they don't think about Al-A'mal necessarily as part of it. Even though they, down on the road, they contradict them. This is a lot because it's a problematic, because it's not the way Islam was brought. Islam was brought to be these three components together, or in more specific, the two components, the actions and the belief. Aman wa amilu salihat. So when you look into that, so that means when I say as-salah, yeah, it is a practical part, but also there's a belief in it. Yes. I believe it's must. I believe it bring me closer to Allah. I believe when I pray, Allah listen to me. That has to do with the aqeedah, with the i'tiqad, with my belief. When I pray, I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward me for it. So Aqeedah should inspire you, in my opinion. The more you study Aqeedah, it inspires you first to understand Allah better. And that's a big, huge part of the Aqeedah. Who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yeah. And the more you know His names, His attributes, His rahmah, His hikmah, His adl, His basically mercy, the more you love Him, the more you trust Him, the more you rely on Him, the more you know that He listens to you, He sees you, the more you fear Him, you respect Him. And the more you do that, the more you submit yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you be looking forward to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Sufyan al-Thawri once was asked, is it true those who get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very well, they will be always afraid of Allah and worries about their relationship with Allah? قال لا من عرف الله طال فرحه. Those truly who knows Allah, they will be always happy. They will be always happy, because I know how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the mu'mineen, how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is nice and kind and to the belief. So the more, and also to respect and to fear Him when it is comes to the area of sinning and basically disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now I just give you an example. Interesting. I was talking to friends earlier. When you, Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned that, when you make dhikrun lillah, when you mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the hadith said, من ذكرني في نفسه ذكرته في نفسي ومن ذكرني في من ذكرته في من. When, as a Athari belief, we do believe that when you say, mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, between yourself, astaghfirullah subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention you to Himself. Literally. It's just make you feel above the clouds. That's not only that, and if you mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a gathering, Allah mentioned in a gathering better than yours, which is the angels. That's enough to make you know how kind Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. How many people we talk about and they never ever talk about it back. Yeah. Like look at all these celebrities and you send them likes and you make comments on the social media. Nobody ever, if he even open your comment, you'll be, oh my God, he looked at my comment, Oh my God, I can't believe it. He retweeted my tweet. You will be, Ya Akhi, subhanallah, Allah, the King of the worlds, mentioned you to the angels. Mentioned you to, not only that, that's where the nukta or faida, the point comes. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said, أنت تذكر الله ذكرا واحدا فيذكرك ذكرين أو ثلاثة. You mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala once, but Allah mentioned you 3 times. How? Before you mentioned him, before you say astaghfirullah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, or reading al-Fatiha or Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you and allowed you to do that. So His will, iradatu, He guided you, He opened your heart to make that dhikr. So He already mentioned you before you mention Him. Then when you mention Him, He mentions you. Then after you finish, Allah thank you for it and mention you again. And reward you for it. You did 1, He did 3. That's why when He said, if you walk, I will run to you. That's what I think. I think the biggest jinayah, the biggest crime, in my opinion, was done to Ilm al-Aqeedah is by dumping the hand, and maybe this is the strongest statement, the non-athari, who transfer Ilm al-Aqeedah into a ilm of philosophy, debates, and it has nothing to do with the nature of the beauty of the Aqeedah. It's turned it to be just ilm al-kalam, just talk, just debatable, raise more doubts. Like one of them was like in the suq, and they said, oh, this is Shaykh and so who have 1,000 proof that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. His whole life is about Allah's exist. Then an old woman in the suq, she said, yeah, because he has 1,000 doubts. I have no doubt he exists. This is something like, oh my God, this is a big issue in these theology books. That's why people turned away from the Aqeedah. It became something so like dry. But when I know that when I fast, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's what the Aqeedah turned you. When I know about the angels, about the day of judgment, about the al-qabr, about the al-rusul wal-anbiya, about mu'jizat al-anbiya, it makes you it open your heart and your mind. And Ibn Taymiyyah said something interesting. He said, الاعتقاد الصحيح أساس الإدراك الصحيح. The more accurate you are in your Aqeedah, the more accurate you will be in your understanding in general. That's why who is the more accurate in fiqh? The early generation, who have the correct Aqeedah. Everybody hands down agreeing to that. From الصحابة والتابعين وأتباعهم الأئمة الأربعة and their immediate students. All this, you never find any one of these are prescribed to any bid'ah or major bid'ah or anything like that, or any theology other than the pure theology, the Athari Aqeedah theology. And it make you consistent. It's just something that I'm very passionate about it, and I do believe that Muslims should not shy away from looking into the way the Aqeedah used to be. Not the argument, not some like nonsense. Somebody just come and tell me Allah He doesn't talk, and now it became like a big issue. No, ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks the way He wants. That's simple.
No, Jazakallah khair. Barakallah fiqh. I really appreciate it, Sheikh. SubhanAllah. You in terms of the simplicity of it, and then how the big effect that it has on a person. Jazakallah khair for that.
There is a man from the Mu'tazila telling a sheikh, he's saying to him, Mu'tazila were empowered at that time. Ahl Sunnah were weak and empowered by the government, the Mu'tazila, and they believe that Allah doesn't talk. So one of them was telling a sheikh, he said, aren't you afraid that the day of judgment you will be held accountable for this belief to say that Allah talks? What would you say to Allah when He tells you, how dare you say that I talk? Then the Sunni Shia said, I'll say, here you go, God. you're talking. And that will be my answer. As simple as that. I said, here you are, you're talking. It just, it's nonsense. When you go outside the simplicity of al-Aqeedah, is so simple. It was narrated that Ali قال العلم نقطة كثرها الجاهلون. Al-ilm is a drop. Ignorant people turn it into an ocean. Otherwise, it's simple.
No, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Sheikh, you mentioned Al-Sunnah and Athari. Now, for those who are watching, there are out there difference of opinion in Aqeedah. But what you're mentioning, which is what we want to talk about more, is the Al-Sunnah and Athari way, inshallah ta'ala. So tell us, what are, like, we touched a bit about, differences of them, but what are those differences, and how can people who are listening say, okay, that I know what is to stay away from and what was, part of, the Aqeedah from what it was as in before.
See, alhamdulillah, the awam, the average Muslims, is upon the Athari Aqeedah. Unless somebody comes and corrupt them. And that's why even the non-Athari, the people who involve in some sects and groups and prescribed some of these sects and groups in Islam, some of them when they went back and they want to repent from all these things that they wasted their life doing, what they say? He said, "Amutu ala aqidat ajaz Nisabur." I die like the old woman of Nisabur, or old women which is the simple, straightforward thing. If I see anyone on the street, if anyone here non-specialized in Aqeedah, and I ask a simple question, does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy? Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yes. When the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told a Bedouin with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet said to him, يضحك ربنا, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laugh at. He said, if our God laugh, that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so nice and kind. He did not take it in any other way other than that. Allah is above the world, above His throne. Khalas, above His throne. Nobody gonna say above His throne, it means He's better than His throne. Or above His throne, I don't know what that means. No, it's simple. Above His throne and throne above the world. How? I don't know how. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has hand, or He said He created Adam with His hand. Created Adam with His hand. Khalas, simple. The average person here that understand. Nobody think, He has a hand like mine. Or you have to be corrupted to be that. That's why Allah said, "Laysa kamithlihi shay." Allah is nothing to him. But also, you don't understand that He doesn't have a hand. No, He has a hand. Created Adam with it. How? I don't know. It's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks. How? I don't know. Speak doesn't mean to have a vocal chords and stuff like that. The way that we talk. No. Machine talks now in a different way. Creations are very different in the way, but I understand talk. When Allah talks, I don't think Allah has an umbrella. I'm no talk. It's so simple. The average Muslim understand that. So I always say, al-awam, alhamdulillah, understand that. But that's not how the bid'ah that introduced Islam. When you say to an average Muslim about the Sahaba, I love the Sahaba. So historically speaking, what happened is what the Prophet ﷺ told us will happen. He said this ummah will be splitting. It will be divided. And that's what happened. They divided from an early time where people cursed the Sahaba, don't believe in the Sahaba. And that led them to take extreme position toward what the Sahaba have narrated. And the moment you drop the Sahaba, you have to drop what they narrated, what they delivered. Okay? And that's why the rejecting of the Sunnah came. And make even no sense that you accept the Quran, because the Quran delivered by the Sahaba. So then after a while, that the issue of the Sunnah and how authentic it is, how reliable the Sunnah is, it became an issue. Like in almost in the 2nd century, people started, but it grow more and more as we go on time. And the ulama rejected that idea, and it became Ahl Sunnah versus those who don't follow the Sunnah. Then Al-Jama'ah versus those who don't follow the Sahaba, because the Sahaba are united Jama'ah. Also Al-Jama'ah versus those who rebel against leaders in that time and break, and Ali radiallahu anh, and the Umayyads after that. So Al-Jama'ah became those who united around the Muslim leaders. They don't break that, like the Khawarij and stuff like that. Later on, you have the people who start like, not following the way of the early generation, which is the way of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een. And those are Al-Jama'ah. So, and that's why his name became Athari, came out. Ahlul Hadith. And Ahlul Hadith is different than what you use in India today, like Ahlul Hadith versus the Hanafi or versus. That's historically not necessarily to be the case. Historically, Ahlul Hadith, it can be Shafi'i and from Ahlul Hadith, like Abu Dawood, for example, or can be Hanbali and can be prescribed to madhab and from Ahlul Hadith. But Ahlul Hadith, it means people who at that time followed the Hadith, followed the Sunnah, followed the narrations, versus people who Ahlul Ra'i, and they don't necessarily prescribe to that. And Ahlul Ra'i also is not equal to the Hanafi, just to make sure that these terms, historically speaking, have maybe a different use than what we have today. Going forward, so all these groups appears, and there's so many of them. What's interesting, when the hadith talk about the split, the hadith never talked about the descriptions or the qualities of these 70 plus groups who split away. The hadith only focus on one group, which is the saved sects. Who are they? What their quality? That's why it is so important for you guys listening to me. Don't focus on what is wrong. Focus on what is correct. Understand what's the Aqeedah of Ahlul Sunnah al-Jama'ah. Take a simple book, read it, like a book by Al-Wasatiyah, for example, Shaykh Taymiyyah rahimahullah. And the books are so many. Look at the Aqeedah al-Imam al-Shafi'i. Look at Aqeedah, Abu Hatim al-Razi. Look at the Aqeedah al-Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah. Open a book like Al-Ibana, Ibn Battal. Open a book like Sharia al-Ajuri, rahimahullah, who was a great Shafi'i scholar. Read their book in Aqeedah. You will find simple, straightforward points. Yes, at a certain point, if you live around or with people who have some problems, you need to learn about how to have build an immune system towards these doubts and stuff like that. But you cannot do that before you invest in the Aqeedah. I don't want a subject of Aqeedah to be a subject that it's meant to divide the community. It's to be a tool to you're mubtada, you're dhal, you're kafir, you're this. That's not the point. The point is Al-Aqeedah has to develop you as a person to have a better relationship with Allah, to be really from awliya Allah, to be among those who have taqwa and those who basically commit to the way of the Prophet ﷺ. The way of a salaf is not just you're wrong, you're bid'ah. That's one of 1,000. But there is another 999 part of it has to do with your salah, with your ibadah, with your akhlaq, and you have Ahl Sunnah have also a method of dealing with those who they disagree with. And we believe that those who we disagree with based on dalil and ijtihad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inshallah forgive them. And so this is like a big topic, cannot be covered from every angle, but as I hope the message is clear and to you guys.
No, Allah barik fi Shaykh. Jazakallah khair. Shaykh, when you mentioned about obviously we're talking about simplicity of Aqeedah. If you talk to a general Muslim, they'll probably have that already with them innately, subhanAllah. Now, of course, when you're living in places like in the West, you will come across so many different ideologies, whether they're from Muslims or non-Muslims alike, subhanAllah. That when this happens, what tends to happen is people start to question their belief. Is this a lack of more knowledge of Aqeedah? And like you mentioned, you dive a bit deeper, you open the books, of Ahl Sunnah, and you learn more how to defend yourself or defend your belief. Would you say that so?
I think that the problem comes when people not well established in their Aqeedah.
Okay.
So they didn't invest in learning. Okay. Also, sometimes it has to do with the lack of a strength of ibadah. Yani your connection with Allah is weak. And it's not about relying on yourself and how smart you are. So when you read in books, there's a lot of people very smart and they deviated and they left Islam and they became even atheists. There is a man, subhanAllah, I went to visit him. Hopefully, I was hoping to see him before he died. His name Abdullah Qasimi. He used to live in Saudi Arabia before, and he wrote a book to refute the atheism and stuff like that at his time. They said that this book is the mahar of al-hur al-ain in Jannah. But this man ended up atheist. He left Islam. He went to France and stuff like that, and he left Islam. And he wrote very bad books refuting Islam. And I heard that he changed and he became back to Islam. So I went to visit him to see if he is a Muslim or not. At least to give him da'wah shahada before he leaves. I couldn't. He was so sick. His daughter didn't allow me to talk to him. But anyway, going back to the point that what people basically, this person became by atheist because he was so arrogant. He even in one of his books said, when he was Muslim, he said that the knowledge that I have, that even prophets didn't have. Like I was so smart, above like the level of prophets and messengers. So it's so arrogant. But going back to the average Muslims, I said this has happened because of the da'f as-sila billah. You think you're doing it in your own. No, ya akhi, I want you to be so strong with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is sometimes I don't have the answer for every question. Yeah. But it doesn't mean I question myself. Because I have, إن قالها فقد صدق. Abu Bakr said, did the Prophet said that? If he said it, it's true. Yeah. Even if I don't know how. Even if I don't have an answer to explain it. That's why, what we call impossible or make no sense, and like a slang kind of language, are two types. والممتنع لذاته والممتنع عادة. It is something that it is impossible because it's self-impossible. It's impossible for something to be exist and not exist in the same time. Inherently impossible. But there is things impossible because of the time and the location and the situation. It's not inherently impossible. For example, it is impossible for someone to speak here and to be heard in another place on the other side of city in the same time. That's 100 years ago. Yeah. But today you can. No. But if you ask someone 100 years ago, it is impossible. But now it is. 100 years ago, it's impossible for someone to own the space. Now it is possible. So it is not impossible it's impossible inherently. It is because of the time, the locations, So that's important to understand. So many things in Sharia and Islam comes, maybe it's impossible for you to see it now, but it's not inherently impossible. Yeah. It can happen. It is, the logic said, possible, maybe. It can change. So don't rush to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has His own way of doing things. And there is nothing in our Sharia inherently impossible. There is nothing like that in Sharia. There is nothing in Sharia ever will contradict al-aql as-sahih. It's like a sound logic, 100%. Never. It's either that's not a sound logic or this is not from the Sharia. So that's part of our belief as Ahlul Sunnah. So don't let these doubts go to your heart. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said, when you deal with the doubts, don't be like the sponge. Observe it, then squeeze it out. Because when you squeeze it out, there is something will remain. Yeah. He said, deal with the doubts كالزجاجة, like a bottle which has glass. The doubt inside, but no touch. You see it clearly through the glass, but you're not affected by it. Don't observe it. So, oh, well, this is a good point. No, it's not a good point. Always comes from a higher level, and that's again part of Aqeedah. Because al-i'tiqad make you connect to Allah, make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I know that Allah al-Hakim, al-Alim, I'm sure that this is the right thing. So there's a lot of talk about how people leave Islam and doubts and stuff, like young people telling me. I don't think the problem is how strong the doubts of our days are. I don't think that's the problem. I genuinely believe that. I don't think the problem is because, these or all these atheists who so scientists and smart and talk about and doubts, and I don't think that's the problem. The problem, because in every generation we had people like that.
Yeah.
We have doubts against that. I think the big difference that we see today, that Muslims today, they are in a certain level of ignorance of their deen. It's unbelievable. And that's why a young Muslim is so vulnerable. Oh, I have doubt of Islam. What do you know from Islam? Nothing. The wave of, like, let's say the wave that comes, it's strong. But the problem is this wall is weak. So when the wave comes, that's why I think we need to invest more, not to refute the doubts, as much as we need to invest more into build a firewall, a resilience Muslims, who, you know what, I don't know what that is, but I know it's not correct. I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is true. Building that Aqeedah, man. Have you been to Emirat before?
Yes.
They told me a story about Emiratis. Okay? They're Bedouins. So somebody was trying to trick them. You're hungry, need medicine. There is something coming to medicine. So somebody was like khabith, and he told them, oh, the medicine, Jesus can bring his medicine to you. Isa? He said, yes. But you believe in him? Isa, طبعا. We believe in Isa. I mean, they are like Muslims. Okay? So they said they can convert them to Christianity. They said, if you bring it to them, would you be grateful to him? Oh, absolutely, we'll be very grateful. So he said, okay. He turned off the light and turned on the light back, and the medicine there. Just like Steve, old trick. It's an old story. Then they said, the medicine? They said, yes, Isa came and dropped it for you. Then these Bedouins said, La ilaha illallah. Isa came. He said, La ilaha illallah. Tawheed, it's so embedded in it. You can't shake that. That's the belief that it is so deep in the heart. No matter what you try, it's just going to go back to the simple thing. So that's the problem is today. This is not what it is. In a simple matter, my kids sometimes, when they see something, I tell you the difference between the past and the modern. When my kids see something they like, what they say?
Oh my
No,
God.
no, you're right. They say, wow.
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 Yeah.
Anyone in my generation, we don't wowie. We don't do wow.
Wow, yeah.
We say, MashaAllah.
Yeah.
That's Aqeedah.
SubhanAllah.
It's so embedded in it. Bismillah, A'udhu Billah, Astaghfirullah, Subhanallah. That's embedded on you. That's part of who you are. But unfortunately today, new generation are not raised this way. They're not raised to have that strong connection with Allah, strong belief in Allah. That's why any doubt can shake them. And I think that's where masjids, educational organizations, Islamic schools' role became crucial to protect the future of Muslims.
Jazakallah khair. Sheikh, you mentioned talking about doubts. Would the same be said in regards to, falling into haram and sinning? Because people, they don't have a strong connection to Allah. They don't, they don't have that connection and process that Allah is the all-seeing, the all-knowing. They'll fall into haram, or maybe they'll result into earning rizq in a haram way, because they say, look, I need to miss Jum'ah for this, or would that fall into this as well as doubts, desires as well?
Yes, the general answer is yes. Al-ulama rahimahullah used to say, al-ma'asi barid al-kufr. It's one of the common statements that the scholar use, that the ma'asi is, the sins are your gateway to kufr. Because if you continue this path, a lot of people might end up leaving Islam completely, and it can be very vulnerable to be, because there's no connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sins, the worst thing about sin, that's the worst punishment of the sin. And think about it. When you sin, it means that you fall from Allah's eyes. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not aid you at that point, did not protect you from this. He left you to yourself. And that's so scary. يهون الإنسان في عين الله. You're insignificant in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's eyes. That's why He left you for yourself. But when you make ta'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, He is the one who opened your heart. He wants you to come. That means He wants you to come into the masjid, His house, you pray to Him so He can hear your voice. That's in itself so honoring. But just leave you for yourself, kida, that's just so hard if you think about it. And Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said this is هي أسوأ عقوبة المعاصي. إنسان يهون من عين الله, يسقط من عين الله. And أكرم شيء في الطاعة, now the best thing of ta'ah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honor you. So for me, when I look at these sins and like this way, definitely it has to do with the weakness, with the you know, that's why the ulama rahimahullah said, an example, when the thief stealing and hear movements and he gets scared, the fear that happened in his heart from that sound is worse than the sin of stealing. Why? Because that means he feared the honor of the guard or the person in the house. He feared him more than Allah. So that's worse than the sin of stealing. You know, the sin of losing hope, like that day one person was telling me, I have a sister, she had a divorce problem, so I had to talk to her husband about child support and stuff like that. So I went to visit him. He's at a restaurant. I never heard him saw in my community before. So when I talked to him, he said, Sheikh, I'm going straight to hellfire. I said, why? He said, I don't pray, I drink, I sell alcohol, blah, 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 blah. I said, Sheikh, whether I'm going to get you coffee, I'll wash the cup, I will make sure it's halal. I said, that's okay. But I told him, you know what's worse than all your sins? He said, what? I said that you don't have hope in Allah. That's worse than all these sins that you mentioned. That's part of your i'tiqad, that's part of your aqeedah. So I agree. But I just want to put a cap into this. Because also, I put the hat of the faqih, that we'll talk with the fiqh rules. Yeah. This sharia is so beautiful, so amazingly perfect. It has also sense of flexibility. Like sharia also recognizes that you might fall into haram for certain circumstances and allowed certain violation to be done for a greater benefit. Yes, I do know that Allah is Razzaq and I believe in that. But still the sharia said if somebody, for example, has a job that it's haram, like I'm doing something it's not allowed, but I do have a family, I have a kids, they're going to go in the street. You know, but nobody will ever tell you, okay, quit because Allah wa Razzaq. No, we said Allah wa Razzaq, you know, start looking for a job and, you know, start purifying your money, but don't just quit today. Yeah, so the Sharia has a balance into this. So I just want to keep that, because sometimes it became like also more ideals or idealistic and live like kind of like an ideal world. No, that's why the Sharia is, that's why the Athari way is a complete package. We don't separate fiqh from aqeedah, we look at holistically. So that's why when we say yes, these things, but we still say no. In fiqh, we allowed you to continue this job until you find another one. You know what? Until you find another house in a halal way or so. Nobody will ever say you waste your money and just quit. And every equity that you invested in the house because it's a mortgage, fi sabilillah. No, we're not going to give you fatwa to do that. And that will not contradict your aqeedah and your belief in Allah Razzaq. It doesn't. So I just want to make sure that we have that balance as well.
Jazakallah khair. Barakallah for pointing now, Sheikh. And Sheikh, subhanAllah, you mentioned about the situation with the youth now. about the disconnect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how do we then, create that reconnection? Because subhanAllah, when we speak about, you mentioned earlier, if we people talk about Aqeedah, we're going to study Aqeedah, and they go, oh, this is, it's, quote unquote, dry subjects, So not knowing what Aqeedah really is, do we then, create, like, I don't want to say beautify it, but make it more attractive to the youth? Or is there another way? Instead of just saying it as straightforward as this is?
I have 2 points in regard to this. Number one is, with the youth, if you have a jar of vinegar and salt and you put a cucumber inside it and you seal it, what's going to happen to the cucumber? It's going to become what? A pickle. Would it ever become an orange? Would it ever become a banana? No way. It's going to be a pickle. So you put a young man in an environment which is so corrupt, he's going to be a pickle. He's not going to be a water rose. He's not going to be like a banana. He's not going to be an apple. He's going to be a pickle. That's what you're going to get. So make sure that you put your young man, your daughters, your sons in an environment that is clean. You will never be able to change the fact. It's a pickle. You're never going to get anything else. So make sure that you put them in the right environment, right jar. You're not going to control everything, but to a certain extent, you have some control, especially in the early age, and especially with the world of the online. So make sure you surround your kids and your kids with good people. And when I say good people, I talk in general. I have my kids who have non-Muslim friends, but you know what? People respect religion, people who are like in the sports, people who are like in this, he has other Muslim friends, and I look at the general sense of society and community where you live. But I'm talking about people of values, ambitions, stuff like that. And it's not an easy thing, by the way, to find kids like this these days, to surround your kids with. But at least Islamic schools and things like that helps a lot. The other area is how we represent the deen to them, like the Aqeedah. Even if it's a dry subject, how can I make it attractive? And I will be talking because I'm president of Al Maghrib Institute and I've been doing this for 20 years through my teaching there. That's one of the things us and many other organizations start thinking about. How can I make Islam appeal to Western audience? Because it's not about English only. I make a lot of funny mistakes in English. It's not my first language, but I try my best to understand the culture of the language. It's more important for me to make sure that you relate to the people who speaks that language. And guess what? Kids today is very hard to keep up with. Like my kids in elementary school, and I have kids in college. Okay, I have like these generations. They don't understand each other. So I laugh. I said, and you want me to understand all of you guys? They reference jokes, points, languages. It became different from one generation to another. Like 6, 7 years, and that's it. A new thing. I'm like going to in the Eid. My son said, oh, Yusuf dipped on us. Okay, thank you. And I need to understand what that word means, So you have to know how to talk to them, what's really makes sense to them, how to speak to them. And that's why it's so important for us to come with programs, we come with ideas, we talk to them in a language that they can relate to, and just not preaching and lecturing and make it a fun thing to do. And I remember in Al-Maghrib, Muhammad Sharif rahimahullah, we used to think about, we start Friday. On Friday, there's where the movie is released. We put for ourselves a standard, which is, I want to make sure that this high school kids or college kids will choose to come to the class over the movie. When we start thinking this way as a Muslim organization, we're going to win the youth. But iyak, don't ever think that I will ever agree or promote or support that in this process, we change the deen. No. And that's big mistake. I remember when I first came to America, I was in a place and I saw boys and girls and teenagers like playing volleyball together, mixed, doing things like, A'udhu Billah. I was like, what in the world is this? And with them a sheikh with a beard and stuff like that. And I said to him, how can you allow something like that? He said, you're new in this country. I said, yes, I just came off the boat. Okay? And he said, no, when you stay long, you'll understand. I said, I don't need to understand. This is haram. And he said, Waleed, Shaykh Waleed, it's much better for Aisha and Fatima to date Ahmed and Majid than to date John and, Peter. I said, no, I think she should date John and Peter. He said, how come? I said, at least you have one person corrupt. When you have Ahmed and I have two people corrupted, you corrupted both of them. And he's like, I said, that's not right. Yeah, so I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about like we don't change the deen, we still the rules, and that's where ilm comes, where area you compromise, where area you tolerate and stuff like that. So I hope these 2 points become like guidelines of how we deal with the youth.
No, barakallah feek, jazakallah khair, Shaykh. It's a really big issue, subhanAllah. And we striving, inshallah, especially with the different things that the Masjid is doing. Allah yabarak feek. So Shaykh,
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah, tafaddal.
I think it's also an issue of for youth. I don't want to put the youth in a position where they have to choose between identities.
Okay.
Like I grow up in let's say in America or in England, and I see myself part of the society. At least in certain areas in England, like a certain youth, that family not very close to the community or to the masjid, their youth. You like it or not, you became a British, culturally stuff like that, a lot of things, and maybe in America we have that more. But now I want to tell him that there is another identity, which is being Muslims, also, or being Pakistanis, or being Arabs, or being Egyptians and stuff like that. A lot of youth, we put them in that identity crisis. And it became, what am I? And it became like kind of, I'm not fully this, I'm not fully that. And I think it's so important for us, at least in America, that's one thing that I always try to say, that you can have multiple, actually, identity. You need to make a choice. I can be an Egyptian, and at the same time I'm a Muslim, and I can be an Egyptian, sometimes I'm Arab. I'm Egyptian, Muslims, Arab. So there is multiple layer of who I identify myself, and I'm a student of knowledge, and I'm an American citizen, and I'm American, whatever. I'm a Saudi, I am this, whatever nationality that you have. I think to a certain extent there is, because each one of them have a different identification to different part of you. Human being is not just one single thing. We are many things. Religion is not the only thing makes us as human. Religion is one component. That's why you might have a Muslim, but he's a monster. He's a Muslim, but he's an angry person all the time. He's a grumpy person, but he's a Muslim. That's a personality. That's another angle of who you are as a human being. And that's why I always believe that it's so important to be a good human being, then you become a good Muslim. Islam perfect you, but you have to have that, that good quality in you. See, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, if you look at them, they were amazing people. Like when he was young, he wrestled, he ride horses, he's a knight, he's an honor person, he has guests, he does all this great. Then Islam came and perfected them. You see what I'm saying? So it's an interesting thing to look at. Today we want that also building a holistic building of this youth. So I hope that we don't have this as a crisis. There's nothing wrong with you being Irish or being, if that's where you are as a race, as a new Muslim, and nothing wrong with you being. I see myself as a British. I don't identify myself with any other culture today. That's fine. As long as you stay a Muslim, and Islam is that umbrella, and under this umbrella, it's allowed so many of these identities to exist. I think that's, in my opinion, one of the areas that the youth need to feel comfortable, not multiple life, not multiple faces, double standards. No, it's a consistent and it's easy, it's going. And I think it's important for parents to know how to manage that and thread that needle in a good way, because sometimes, don't think yourself American or British. You're this, you're Egyptian, you're. It doesn't work this way, especially when it comes to cultural things, marriage, divorce, stuff like that.
Yeah. No, Sheikh, this is an absolutely an excellent point that you make. SubhanAllah, I remember being with brothers who were starting to practice the deen, and they may have lived their life, whether it was involved in sin, whatever, but even within that time of their life, there were still some good qualities about them. So what they did was they dropped certain personalities to, becoming, I don't know, more quote unquote Islamic, from what they see people do, whether it's, frown on the face or stern, and they never used to be this type of person, or whether it's someone who is always, showing the zuhud, is always bowing and, wants shying away from, and they never used to be these people. So what ended up happening is they would start to, it would become too tough to keep up the act. It would become too tough to keep up the act, whether to a certain. So what it means is that when your iman is high, you're acting a certain way, and then when your iman is low, you're resorting back to, what you would call your usual personality.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. See, I'll tell everybody, there's a verse in the Quran. For me, I take it as one of the guidelines. Allah says about those who commit to the religion, what will happen? فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى. Yani, will make it easy for him to have an easy life. Anytime you practice the religion and you feel you're not in ease, there is something wrong in your practice. If you feel Islam have put you in a tight, like, there's no comfort, no ease, that means there is something wrong. You will be tested, but that's different than even when you test it, you're in ease. But if there is that means your understanding of the religion is wrong. Like sometimes people ask me questions, I said, who told? Like somebody was having a fight with his high school kid. A fight. And the principal sent me a letter in the Masjid and stuff like that. Why? This kid's so difficult things. Why? Because he thinks kufi is must. And the principal said he cannot wear kufi. And he said, my religion rights. And he became a civil rights issue. And I said, who told you this? You have to wear kufi in Islam all the time? Or to have a hat in your... Yani, if you say imama, maybe, but even hat is like, what I'm saying? I don't know where this hat started. Like, definitely it's not the Prophet on time. But I was like, why you put yourself so difficult? That's something wrong in your understanding of it. Somebody became a Muslim, is like, Sheikh, my back hurts. I said, okay, why are you coming to me? Go to the doctor. He said, no, Sheikh, I sleep on the floor. I said, okay. They said, because I know it's sunnah, and my wife is a convert, and we know the sunnah, please, can we get a bed? Is it allowed? Putting himself in so much difficulty. And that's real question, that's real scenario, by the way. It's not made up story. And I said, do you know that the Prophet had a bed? Oh, I thought he sleeps. Yeah, he sometimes sleeps on the floor, but also had a bed. Can I say, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Oh, I didn't know that. So just in general guidelines, if you feel that things so difficult not working for you because of the religion, there is something wrong in your understanding of the religion. Go ask someone of knowledge, and he will explain to you. Because Allah told us that the more we commit, the more ease life become, even in the time of difficulties. فإن مع العسر مش بعد مع, with the difficulty there is ease. Where you live comfort and ease and tranquility and say. And that's why يعني, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said something very, very profound. He said, anytime you do ibadah and you don't feel the sweetness of it, فإن عملك مدخول. There must be something wrong in your ibadah. If you pray and you feel zero feeling, there is something wrong. Either your ikhlas or mutaba'ah. You're not doing according to the sunnah, or there is something in your sincerity and what's in your heart when you're praying. Otherwise, if you have these two, you must see the result of it. Anyway, so yani, I think these will help to ease a little bit the situation here.
Barakallah fiqh. Sheikh, subhanAllah, we talked about a lot of things, alhamdulillah, from Aqeedah, to belief, to doubts, and desires, and talking about the youth. I highly appreciate your time coming in and having this podcast. I know it's not, you've not had many podcasts, mashallah.
That's my third one.
Allahumma barik.
So
it's a pleasure to be the third, mashallah. And I appreciate even you asking me a question that's actually been a first on this show. Alhamdulillah. Walakin Sheikh, if we could summarize, if you had a message to conclude this session, inshallah ta'ala, please tafadal, inshallah.
Well, since we start talking about the Aqeedah, I have a message for all Muslims who hear me. It is so important to focus on building principles and foundations. If you look at anyone who called revivalist in Islam, mujaddidun, you look at what make them mujaddid and revivalist and a major contributor is their focus on the principles, not on the small details here and there. What will unify us as a Muslim ummah are these principles of our deen. We're not going to be unified around a person, about madhab, about one fiqh issues. We're never going to be unified around these. We're going to be only unified as Muslim around principles, about the correct. We want to be unified in a way other than what Allah said in the Quran about the people who He criticized. تَحْسَبُهُمْ جَمِيعًا وَقُلُوبُهُم شَتَّى. You see them all together, but their beliefs are different. That's not us as Muslims. We want a unity that's based on these principles. And what can unify the people? كلمة التوحيد هي أساس توحيد الكلمة. The kalima of tawheed, it will make tawheed, and unify the Muslims. The correct aqeedah, the principles of our aqeedah. That will give a strong foundation for you to face these changes that happen around you. These foundations in aqeedah and principle in aqeedah, the more you believe, the more you connect yourself with Allah, the more you anchor yourself with the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, with what are in the Quran and Sunnah, simple, clear, the more you do that, the more you are protecting from the change that happened in the Ummah. And believe it or not, the change can happen very quickly. And I was telling some of the brothers yesterday, Musa alayhi salam, that's a prophet living with them, as not just any prophet, a prophet who Allah talks to him. Ulil Azm min al-Rusul. And Bani Israel, not only Musa and Harun. And those people, Bani Israel, not like they're righteous and ubad and student of knowledge among them, and like any other community and da'wah. And guess what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored them and did what He did to them. Then Musa alayhi salam just left for 40 days, 60 days. What happened to them? They stopped worshipping al-ijl, worshipping a calf, an idol, going from the tawheed in a matter of a few weeks. From tawheed, they go to the shirk or ibad al-asnam. All the story of Bani Israel are mentioned to us so we can learn from it. And Ibn Abbas said, we are so similar to the Jews. قال أشبه الناس بنا. I don't know if we're going to worship calf like them or not. That's the only thing. I'm not sure if we're going to ever have a calf to worship. But the point is, if this can happen to them, can happen to anyone else. That's why Ibrahim alayhi salam said, وَجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ. Protect me and my children from ibadat al-asnam, from worshiping. Ibrahim, the Imam Muhammad, and who's his children? It's not yours and mine. His children are prophets and messengers. Yet he's worried about that. That's why Ibrahim al-Taymi is a great Imam among the Tabi'een. قال وَمَنْ يَأْمَنُ الْبَلَاءَ بَعْدَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. If Ibrahim is worried about shirk, who can feel safe? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said also about Yaqub when he brought his children, and they are also who they are. He told them, مَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن بَعْدِي. Who is he going to worship? So this is قضية القضايا. And I'm saying this because a lot of Muslims, especially immigrant Muslims, we take Islam for granted. So our tawheed is set on the heart. I never really needed my father to talk to me about Allah is wahid and Allah is this, worship and Allah. It's so clear to me. But your children, this is not the case. Your youth are not the case. It's so easy to forget about the tawheed, to forget, even you, it's easy to forget, is to shake your foundation. If you don't pay attention to it, if you don't protect it, if you don't listen to talk that has to do with strengthening your relationship with Allah, loving Allah, respecting Allah, depending on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing and submitting yourself to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to believe in His names and attributes the way it came in the Quran. That's the essence of Allahu Rabbi. That's innocent of when you in your grave ask, Man ya Rabbuk Rabbi Allah. That's how I know Him. So I think this is an issue, this is like a very, very fundamental issue for every man and woman to focus on. And unfortunately today, this kind of shy away from teaching Tawheed, teaching Aqeedah classes. You don't see as much. Any bid'ah regardless, it's okay, just to let it go. And became like so ridiculous that like to the level that even clear things that completely contradict Islam, and it became, maybe two opinions, maybe khalas, where are we going to draw the line? I do believe that you should be friend and nice with everyone, but in the same time everyone know where the right and wrong. يتبين الحق من الباطل, the right, the falsehood from truth. That's our obligations. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us and make us a tool of unified people around the truth, and make us able to benefit the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
It's been an absolute privilege, and I'll keep repeating it, alhamdulillah, but
Jazakallah khair. Privilege is mine, and I'm very happy to be here with you guys. And I'm looking forward for, inshallah, a beautiful 2 days left. You guys have nice weather, by the way, these days. Nice. Houston is where I came from. It is hot. It is like, literally, it is like was in mid-30s when I came.
It gets like that in the summer here.
Yeah.
But now, mashallah, when in the kind of springtime, there's a bit of drizzling there, and then the coolness and
alhamdulillah. So it's interesting. Like I was like coming thinking it's gonna be colder, but alhamdulillah, it's very nice. Been very nice.
No, jazakallah khair, alhamdulillah. And with that, inshallah, we will end this episode of Beyond the Mimbar. I like to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost for allowing us to be here and to be able to discuss what we discussed. And I also would like to give thanks to our Shaykh for coming and enlightening us, and anything you found beneficial, inshallah, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and if you have any comments, leave them in the comment section, inshallah. And we hope that you have sincerely and benefited from this session. Until next time, I've been Muhammad Basyouni here with Shaykh Waleed, Dr. Shaykh Waleed Basyouni. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.